And it's a pleasure to be here to take you on a journey. I'll speak slowly so that hopefully the interpreters can keep up. The idea of this talk is a journey, and there are signposts, but there's no destination because we're here to talk about the future of work. And for me, that's a collision between three areas in corporate life. You can see the physical space, the blue, and you can see the technology, the green, and you can also see the people in the red. And I think it's those three areas that are colliding to talk about where work is heading and the future. Now, there are 6 forces that are reshaping the world of work. And I won't talk about all of those today. I'll focus a little bit about technology and follow what Harold has shown us. And then we'll look at physical buildings, and I'll show you some innovation from around the world. And there's just 2 slides about our credentials for showing you the future. We founded the business 20 years ago and have worked for over 1,000 corporate clients all over the world, helping them on their journey to a very different vision for work and the workplace. And we do through some consulting firms we own, but also these events and other activities to stimulate innovation. And I write books on global workplace trends. These are some of the books I've published. They're all available. They are in Spanish, Mandarin, Russian, a whole range of different languages, whatever suits. And they have all the case studies and the ideas to share with you. So let's start. And I think just to kind of begin the process, culture, how and where we work is really fundamental. And you can go back and see these ideas that are well documented in the media. This is obviously a famous film where people are lined up in boxes and you watch them work. And you don't see much has changed. We still seem to be dominated by desks, and we still have desks that look like this all over the world. And I think what's clear is that if you look at our fathers and mothers and our grandfathers and grandmothers, the office that they occupied hasn't changed very much by and large. We still have a piece of wood, and on that piece of wood we have a thing called a telephone, and we have some kind of communications device. And by and large, when I visit workplaces anywhere in the world, you still see this. And of course, it means that we are chained to the piece of wood because of our communications technology. So a prediction for you today is that the office telephone will be dead in 5 years. I think there'll be no more fixed phones at all in any office building. And it would all go to mobile and software. We want to talk to a person and not a piece of wood. And that's a big change that I think we're going to see. The next barrier is paper. I still see people swamped by paper. That is a great photograph. It was taken about a year ago, and this man just couldn't function because of the amount of paper he had. But I think, as Harold alluded to, when you start using these incredible screens that Harold is developing in his lab, you get to a stage where you co-author, you work together live, and you can't use paper. So I think there'll be a very quick death of paper as we head to digital collaboration, or what I call digital flow. And then that's the problem that Victor talked about. The financial people love it. They say, well, let's just get more people into less space, and we squeeze the footprint more and more. But again, that's not where we want to work, is it? And that's not what anyone here, I guess, would choose as a great place to do great work. Or that, maybe. Do we really want to always be connected every part of the building? This is a real example. But the key for me is that we've come a long way. We've evolved as humans up to this point where we're hunched over the computer. And our challenge is, what's next? What is our next trajectory? Where do we want to go to do this great work? And there's no doubt that we are now in a world of mobility. 4G networks are rolling out all over the world. Wi-Fi has exploded. And people can now carry a device and begin to work anywhere. But that has some problems. So a quick video for you to show you the day in the life of a mobile worker. So enjoy. Here's some sound. It's a bit of fun, but it's got a serious note to it, because what we're now seeing is really interesting, that I'm seeing offices where there's a constant window to somewhere else. So this is somebody's desk, it's a manager's office in a building, and next to him, at the same head height, is a window to a colleague somewhere else in the world. Always on, always connected. And I'm seeing the same in Asia with Teams. You can see just about that this bench almost continues into a virtual bench, linking two teams together in real time. And I've been in the space, and just they wave and they start talking, and it's almost natural. They begin instant messaging, and then they click on link and they move to a conversation because they can see the person there. So I think what Harold showed you as well this morning is going to break down barriers. It's a theme that we call the death of distance. And for the first time, it's almost seamless. It doesn't need you to book a video conference or a formal audio call. You can just link to people seamlessly. So technology is really exploding. We see fantastic improvements. Now the cloud has taken us to what we're now thinking about as a thinner building. For those that like the flat iron, it's a building that's less about housing infrastructure, kit, equipment, and much more about people. And in the thin building, we don't need to have these. We don't need the servers and the complexity that we have today or in the near past. It's about connecting a device that has no Ethernet port, and therefore it defaults to wireless. But that has problems. The IT people still can't touch and feel it. And a lot of people still are scared that you can't see the way that these devices are connecting back to the cloud. But wireless is going to be phenomenal. We're just beginning in this brave new world of wireless, because once you use wireless devices, Blackberries, mobile phones, laptops and tablets, this is what you can do. You can model your offices in real time, and this is a heat map showing how the office is used just by tracking all the wireless devices. And this gets quite exciting. If you use the right technology, on the left-hand side, this thing called the MAC address, this list of numbers, each one is a person's device. So without you doing anything, you can see who's come into your space and who's there. You can do that today. If you look on the right-hand side, if you let them log in through Facebook, you then know who they are by name. And you can then interact with them. And this is the brave new world. This is going to revolutionize retailing, but we also think it will change the way we operate in offices, because you can interact with people based on who they are in real time. Imagine coming into reception and you're greeted by name because the receptionist has your photograph appearing on his or her screen as you walk into the building. All these things will come very quickly. So wireless we'll come back to. Anyone want to guess what that picture is? It's a bird's eye view of something. Anyone feeling brave? What are we looking at? Buildings, absolutely. Which are the buildings? No, the places in between are the buildings. The shapes are car parks. This is Albuquerque, and all the green is where cars park in the city. But what happens when you have self-driving cars? We predict the end of car parking, because the car will drop you at your office and then drive itself somewhere else to park and come back and fetch you when you ask it to. And if you look at the growth in self-driving cars, they'll be very, very frequently appearing in about 5 years' time. Audi and all the others. And the car sees this. That's how it self-drives. That's what it looks at. And that's what it has inside to allow it to drive on its own. Incredible technology. That's a test track in Nevada. We think the same thing will come into the office. The same technology that cars are using to drive themselves will soon appear with people. Now, the problem today is you end up looking like this. Not so good, yes. But when you begin to think about this, the Google Glass, and you see what you'll be able to look at on a contact lens, on a glasses, what's called augmented reality is very close. And if you take apart the iPhone and look inside, you have incredible technology. Gyrometer, barometer, accelerometer. This stuff will kind of suddenly be used inside offices. And we predict a new trend called a building nervous system, where these miniaturized sensors are everywhere in your buildings. And it's coming. It's being called the Internet of Things and other trends. The prediction is that more traffic will be on the internet from objects than people in the next few years. And the technology that's backing this is really exciting. You probably heard of RFID and Bluetooth. The N in the middle is near field communication, NFC. And if you look at this tiny black speck here on the thumb, that is a radio frequency chip. It will be in everything. So what does this mean for the office? Well, back to wireless. When you come into a space, you can see here on the smartphone, it knows where you're standing in the office. On the right-hand image, it tells you where you're standing and what desks are free in real time, based on who you are. You can check into a desk either using the camera on your phone or by touching it to an NFC reader to check in. And then you can see where your friends and colleagues are in real time. So you begin to look at a live floor plan of all the people in your workspace moving around with their photographs. And on their photographs, you can have their Twitter or Yammer or SharePoint or anything you want live. So the serendipity we heard about from Greg this morning, it will happen this way, we think. It knows who's in, and it will connect you together. And it will even change the space based on who you are. So here you have an idea which is being developed where you, as your badge, for example, can change wayfinding, directional signage based on who you are, where you're going, your language, etc., etc. And this will then link into the building system to, for example, hibernate the air conditioning if a room hasn't been booked. So very energy efficient. So the Internet of Things is huge. And then there's so much innovation. The last one I want to show you is the first ever self-powered sign now working in Google Mountain View in their labs, using ambient light and wireless to use a sign with no cables or power needed. And Intel, they just announced this week the first solar-powered chip where you have no need for a battery. So solar power will power the chip direct with no battery pack at all. And what's coming next is really exciting. Again, just a few things for you. Can you see yourself wearing these? Anyone like the idea of wearing goggles rather than looking at a screen? We're not sure. We're not sure. But Intel are now pushing the idea of wireless displays, with a new thing called WiDi, a bit like Wi-Fi, but stands for wireless display. So you can then just link to a display with no cables in sight. A bit like Harold was showing, throwing images, interacting with things. And the other big area of innovation is the end of cables for power. So there's a new global standard called Qi. It's the symbol up there. Qi is really accelerating. You can see from the bottom video, you just drop your device on a Qi mat and it trickle charges. So that's here. We think that the exciting thing is it will be inside tables and furniture very quickly. So this is a wireless power moat for a meeting table. It slides underneath. Anything you drop on the surface just recharges. And you can power quite serious devices. This is a KitchenAid blender on the right-hand picture, working as you can see. I slide it away. There are no cables. It's working completely wirelessly through a moat. High wattage devices. And it gets even more exciting when you look at innovation. Again, there's so much we could talk about, but here is a wireless powered shelf for a shop. You put the magazine on the shelf and the ink reacts to the wireless power. So you can print ink that will actually react to a wireless inductive environment. And the ideas go on and on and on. So there's some cool stuff coming. And all this together really comes back to how we work. Some of the things that Victor was saying and others around social networks and interaction. And we had a great idea, which has massive interest now, is that you can work out who emails who inside an organization. This is a piece of software that is just tracking who's emailing people inside your company from Exchange and at what volume, how many, at what frequency. And so suddenly you can look at those red dots and see they have something in common. They are emailing each other, but they could be scattered around a campus or in different buildings, in different departments. But for the first time ever, you can understand and look at the real work and the real business that people are doing inside a company. And therefore, you can accommodate people based on this and not the corporate hierarchy. Yeah, most companies say we put finance here, legal here, marketing here, sales here, and they're done by departments and headcount. But that's not how people work anymore. They work around cross-functional teams. And you can now map those teams. So the leading companies, property people and facilities people are now saying, we're going to accommodate the real networks and communities and clusters that we identify for the future. And this has great problems because they're the ones that innovate. So you have to change the way that you accommodate and occupy buildings. And Stephen Johnson, who wrote a fantastic book called Where Good Ideas Come From, he keynoted our Worktech in San Francisco, so you can watch him on video on Worktech TV, but he says that innovation comes out of the adjacent possible. You have to bring people together to get good ideas. So what does this mean for buildings and property? Well, to me, we should forget the kind of old debate about desks, desk sharing, open plan, cellular. That's a kind of dead debate. Instead, we have to focus on activity. And it was really interesting to hear Harold talk about software becoming more focused on activity. Because activity is everything, people and what they do. And what we have a prediction for here is that if you look at activity-based working or activity-based clustering, which is what we showed you just there, that is, we think, the next big change. ABC, activity-based clustering, is the next big way of future workplace. And it can reduce your costs by 30% instantly because you load balance your buildings. But in the future, who knows? You heard about liquid space, I think, from Greg this morning. So we now predict maybe workplace as a service. A bit like software as a service. You pay on demand. It's a trend very big in North America called consumption economics. You pay for what you use. And that's the model for the cloud. If you now go to Citrix, Microsoft, Salesforce, you pay per user per month. You no longer buy fixed infrastructure. So this is changing very quickly, and it has a huge impact on the ability to save money. I thought I'd put this clipping in for Horatio to comment on, because we see lots of interesting people around the world saying, we want to reduce the cost of our buildings. And you can do this, we think, very successfully. So what does the future of work look like? So my favorites, I'll show you a few of my favorites from around the world. So the first stop is Melbourne in Australia. And this is the Hub. We discussed the Hub a bit earlier. It's a co-work space in Melbourne. It has 2,000 people waiting to join. You can see the density of this. I mean, look how close people are together. It's a cheap fit out, and people want to be there. And it's hosted by this lady here, who is actually called the host. And that's what makes the magic, because she knows everyone, and she makes people interact. She makes people sit next to each other. It's a kind of real social network. And this is the Hub in London, the latest of their incarnations. The Hubbers built their own room. They build their own desks. It's a kind of really interesting construct. They bake cakes for each other. It kind of builds on some of the things we've talked about, but it really becomes an inclusive community. One of my favorites from the book was this. This is a fantastic building. It's BMW's office in Leipzig. And BMW wanted to make their engineers remember what they were there to do, build cars. So they diverted the production line through the office. So the engineers are working at their desks, and the half-made cars pass silently above their heads. Not a cheap concept. But the idea of the brand is really becoming interesting. This is Unilever in Singapore. And Unilever owns big brands around the world, and yet their offices you would never know. Now they're changing it. So now you have the Lipton's Tea Cafe. You have the Ben & Jerry's ice cream parlor. You have the Tony and Guy hairdressing salon. It's the first office I've been to anywhere in the world where they serve you an ice cream in reception. And you work there. You can work in an ice cream parlor. Why not? And Vodafone in Amsterdam, you know, they provide the technology for mobile workers. Well, in their office, they have train carriages and other things. They try and use the office to represent their business in a very, very good way. This is actually an insurance company in the south of Holland called Interpolis. And they were the first company to introduce activity working. 5,000 people, nobody has a desk. They all carry laptops, they all carry wireless phones, and they've invented fantastic spaces for working. This is now called the ear chair. And it provides complete acoustic privacy. You cannot hear somebody next to you. And they're all over the place. Wonderful lounges. This is called the Stone Hut, designed by the Dutch artist Marcel Wander. They have rich environments designed by artists, by creative people. They have streets, restaurants, cafes, but very few desks. And the people that owned Interpolis, Rabobank, have just opened their new global headquarters in Utrecht, also for 5,000 people. No one has a desk, even the chief exec, under a program called Rabo Unplugged. And when you walk into Rabobank, you have this plaza area, thousands and thousands of square meters of interesting spaces, fantastic structures. These birds' nests are meeting spaces. They have meeting rooms here on the right made out of cardboard. And everyone lives in a house, like the Dutch house. You have no desk, no office, you have a house. And you share the house with about 600 or 700 people. And it works very well. And there are lots of specialist space around Rabobank, inspirational places to go and work. I thought I'd just show what Harold's company has done. They have a program called the New World of Work. And this is their Amsterdam office. Again, it's a really advanced workspace where people are using the technology and challenging the way they work and the spaces they work in. And my favourite, most recent one is in Australia. This is the Commonwealth Bank of Australia. They've just opened this new headquarters, again for 5,000 people. And the Australians have really thought this through. They are building buildings for this. They're not leasing a building. The building, as you can see, has no central columns, no central cores, no lifts. It's a place for people with incredible staircases, sight lines across, kitchens placed in the prime spaces. Here, on the edge of all these balconies are kitchens. And look at how they're working. These are 5,000 bankers. This is a mainstream global bank. Every single person has a wireless MacBook Air. Everybody. And the spaces just go on. Really exciting. And the same Australians are pushing the boundaries. This is Macquarie Bank, but this is their London project. So they took a typical high-rise building near Moorgate in the city of London, and they ripped out 10 floors. Huge expense to put this staircase in. So these were solid floors in a brand new building, and they ripped them all out, and they made this incredible staircase because it's about people and community, not about floors and desks. And you can see the investment that these companies are putting into these things. Huge investment because they believe in the vision for future work. And then you go to the West Coast and you see what Yammer is doing. Really exciting spaces, pushing the boundaries with technology using Link. You look here at an advertising agency, Chiat Day in Los Angeles, in Venice Beach, using a cheap space, a warehouse with no windows, making one of the best workplaces in the world with the cheapest real estate possible, building the mini city we heard about this morning. And then you look at Facebook, the new campus, before Greg's vision with the kind of one room for the thousands of engineers. But this is the existing campus. And the mix, the way they look at food, the way they're using Facebook to find people, so much innovation, but the city is the basis for how they're looking at space. Because they're all asking people, why am I here? Why have I come to this physical building when I don't need to, because the technology is somewhere else? And it's then about innovation. It's about pushing the boundaries of the space that you create to make people slightly uncomfortable or inspired. And these are the spaces where people are having the ideas. They look different. It's about some fun. It's about having a place to think, a place to kind of interact that doesn't look like a workplace. And these are Google spaces in Zurich. The Swiss are not known for innovation, but here they are really enjoying different ways of working. Even the slide, I'm sure you've seen, that goes into the restaurant. And lastly, going to Google in Mountain View. And again, I think why they're so exciting is that they push the boundaries so much. Here with food, they now grow their own vegetables, they grow their own herbs, they're much more concerned with the well-being of their people based on what they're eating. And here, the last one on the bottom right, they have a new thing called Good Foodback, and you touch your phone to the food you've eaten to tell your friends in Google what's good to eat that day and give the chefs live feedback. So lots of innovation is coming. So that's your journey. There is so much going on, but to me it's extremely exciting that we're looking at a future for work, I think led by technology, changing how people want to work and therefore changing the physical spaces that we're creating for that work to take place. Thank you.